Well, hello there. This is your instructor, Drew Neal. I decided to make a video introduction instead of the normal paper one that I file even on online, simply because I wanted you to see this remorseful face that somehow we didn't start this class on the best foot. But as always, you as students are ready to go and way ahead of the instructor, and that may, well, the communication problem won't occur again, but the fact that you might be ahead of your instructor all the time probably will be, but depends on how you define it, I suppose. So let's take a look at this cheat sheet called a resume here. The highest degree that I have attained is a doctorate in jurisprudence, otherwise known as a law degree. I have done postmaster's work in criminal justice because that's one of the subjects I teach in, is criminal justice, and some universities require you to have at least 18 hours of graduate work in criminal justice, and they don't consider the fact that a person who's been a prosecutor and a defense attorney for years and a law enforcement officer as well doesn't mean as much as 18 hours of graduate credit. So I took more than 18 hours of graduate credit, but I didn't follow through with the master's in criminal justice because I'm just trying to put a check in a box, and perhaps some of you are doing that in your professional life. I'll get to know you a little better when I read all the biographical information, but often, as you probably know, if you want to get promoted in your field or move to another field using the skills that you have learned and any of the public service, public safety jobs, including the three behind me here. Generally, people want, if you're going to move up, not to be the frontline worker, but if you want to move up in the system, have more responsibility, have more impact on the program that you work for, you need to have higher education. And that separates those who are just happy at being a direct service employee, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. And those of you who might be saying, I want to think about what I'm going to do when I retire, or I want to be in a position to take advancement within my agency or another agency, and have realized that you've got to have a higher education to do that. So anyway, I hope you're enjoying this PSA program. I really like teaching in this program. I've done a lot of things, which is really why I'm going to show a little more than I normally do. But I think it's good to sort of have a diversified background if you're going to teach in an area. And so I also have various interests, so it leads me down different career pathways and different educational academic subjects pathways, but that's what makes life interesting. So all of my undergraduate and graduate degrees are all from the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. My first teaching position was when I was a graduate student in clinical psychology. I basically started college wanting to be a child psychologist, and I achieved that goal. And while I was in graduate school, I had the opportunity as a teaching assistant to co-teach a class on human sexuality with a full-time tenured professor. So they were trying to get male-female representation in front of the class. So it was a basically the first college class that I taught as a team taught. So, and that was a long time ago. So I've taught at, I don't know, 6 or 7 different universities or colleges. Right now I'm teaching at 3, not always all 3 at the same semester, but I have lots of time on my hands this semester because of COVID has affected enrollment so greatly. So let's see. Started out as a clinical psychologist because of what ended up being my master's mentor for my master's degree, who was a child psychologist in Illinois, and convinced me to go to the mental hospital, not to check myself in, but to check out a job that he had just written a grant for. And he thought, wink, 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 that if I applied, I would get the job. And I wasn't really looking for a job. I had a part-time job, but it was such a compliment to me. It was in the field that I wanted to work in. I took the job. I got offered the job. I took it. And then I had to figure out how I was going to jam in being a full-time student and a full-time worker. But as you know, being in the business that you are, 40-hour week just is not something that we get. We get 40-hour plus weeks, and sometimes our entire career is that way. So I started there, and then I went into community mental health and worked as a juvenile court psychologist for the juveniles that were involved in the court system. Some of them were incarcerated, some of them were just in a day program, and I did the court evaluations for those that they felt like they wanted an evaluation, and then performed individual therapy or group therapy with the residents. So from that job, I took a job with the Department of Children and Family Services, where I joined as a child protective service worker, and worked myself up in that system to be what was labeled a child protective service investigator because of my background in working with the courts and my degree in clinical psychology. I was pretty good at evaluating cases a little differently than maybe a social worker background was. So from there, since I was married, my wife wanted to move to Oregon because of her sister living out there. So moved out there, and I became a clinical director of a program that was residential and outpatient for kids, and did that. And then my wife wanted to come back to Illinois. So we came back to Illinois. And at that time, I decided I was crispy on the issue of being a psychotherapist and dealing with that issue. So I went back to graduate school and bummed around about 3 different degrees, master's level, public administration, health administration. None of that really seemed, hospital administration. None of those 3 degrees really excited me very much. So I ended up getting offered a job working for the Illinois State Senate. I worked for the Senate Republican staff as a staffer. My committee was public health, welfare, and corrections, which covers most of what probably all of you are working in, and drafted bills, and of course consulted and researched things, and actively campaigned for state senators who were running for reelection. It was a very interesting job, and because of that job, I got an opportunity to be the basically what they call a legislative liaison for a state agency. I got a chance to go back to Children and Family Services, not as a frontline worker, but as a legislative liaison, which is basically a lobbyist for the state agency, and did that for a number of years. Changed wives, and decided I was going to go to law school. And for those of you who are over 22 years old and taking classes, I was 37, a ripe young age of 37 when I went back to law school. Got that degree and decided I was tired of the cold weather in Illinois, so I came back to my home state, which is New Mexico, and became a district attorney. And then that situation, I went from being a prosecutor, which is really what I thought I was going to be, a career prosecutor, and then unfortunately, maybe some of you have been in this situation, you find out you're working for a boss who's just not a good person. And when you go to work and you think that you represent the district attorney because you're an assistant district attorney, and your boss is a unlikable, unprofessional person, sometimes you just have to, as we say in the military, pop smoke and get out of there, which I did. Didn't have a parachute, a golden parachute plan. So I ended up taking a job with the Navajo Nation, with the Supreme Court Justice of the Navajo Nation. And I worked for him as a law clerk for a while. And then from that job, I went back to Albuquerque, because that job was actually in Arizona, Window Rock, Arizona, and became a public defender, which was quite a change for me, having been a prosecutor for years, and then now I'm on the defense side, as we say, or as law enforcement says, move to the dark side being a defense attorney. So I did that for a number of years, and then I got called. I've been in the Army, and then I was in the National Guard and the Army Reserve for a while, and I got in the National Guard side, I got called up for active duty, and did 2 years as a law enforcement officer. They sort of sent us through not an official academy like those of you who are law enforcement officers had to go through. This was more of a glorified security officer, except we did have guns and we did have arrest powers, but our job was to protect American Air Force bases as an Army person, which was kind of interesting. And so I did that for 2 years. Not a lot of crime happening, 2 years, affected one felony arrest, and wow, not a lot of action, which is a good thing. I mean, the security part was pretty important because we were guarding property, and that was very expensive, like the stealth aircraft was one of our airframes, and the F-16 was one of our airframes, not to mention that we had satellite stuff that was spooky, and bomb testing and all sorts of rocket testing. And it was a very good 2 years. I got activated to go to Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. I worked for the command staff. I was in charge of the Visitors Bureau, which for those of you who don't have military background, that's the people who have to deal with all the upper level people who want to come and see how Guantanamo is treating their detainees. So my job was to make sure that they got taken from point A to point B, and they always had water, and they always got their meals on time, and their lodging on time. And so we had a constant stream of, 1-star, 2-star, 3-star generals coming through, senators, US representatives, all the alphabet group was all there. And we got visitors who were from alphabet agencies from other countries. Mostly they're diplomatic staff, and of course they're what would be equivalent to the CIA for their country, which sometimes come as civilians and sometimes come as uniformed people. So from there, get caught up with my career. I started teaching full-time, which is what I wanted to do. I'd been teaching on the side. I taught psychology at Guantanamo Bay when I was stationed there for Columbia. So that was kind of fun. They were looking for a psychology person for a long time, and so they got me. So now I teach a lot of psychology. I teach criminal justice. I teach a lot of business classes, business ethics, business law in that area. So I do teach in a lot of different areas. And this public service class 410 is an enjoyable one to teach. So one of the goals that you are aware of, since you've all read the syllabus, is to pick a subject that you're going to write your terminal paper in, and I have to look at your ideas. And I want this to be very dynamic. When you need things, you want things, you can send me an email. I think with the number of students that we have, which at present is like 12, I think we should have an opportunity to meet, not as a class, because that's probably you're all working different shifts and all and whatnot, but I'd like to meet with you individually on Zoom and just look at you and talk to you about what's good, what's bad, what you need more of. I'll tell you, one of the things I was working on before I got on camera here was I was trying to get you a digital copy of APA formatting, manuscript formatting, the 7th edition. And I believe I bought it, but it's taking time to download. I will upload it in its digital form to Blackboard, so you will have it. Some of you are going to be more skilled in APA formatting than others. I understand that. I'm not like graduate school where, putting a comma or putting a semicolon instead of a colon is going to take your A paper and drop it into a B just because you made a formatting error. And I'm not kidding when I say that. And I'm not kidding. But in my class, my goal is to take you where you are and move you further down the spectrum of understanding correct use of APA 7. Okay? That will help you. It's actually a gift to you If you're going to go on after this degree, go into graduate school, or if you're going to do any writing, some of you generally have had some significant experience in your career field and have thought about writing in that field, thought about teaching in that field, you have to get comfortable with APA 7. And the switch from APA 6 to 7 was traumatic for some of us. If you've not been skilled in 6, it might be a better thing, because then you can get skilled in 7 and not have to unlearn all the things that you used to do under APA 7. So I don't think I posted this because I usually do that. I'll send you an email announcement, and I'll give you my email address and my telephone number. I prefer to use an email address other than the school's email address, because if you use the one I give you, it's solely dedicated to the classes that I'm teaching. I'm only teaching one other class this semester, so I do have a lot of time on my hands. And if you send me a message, I'll get it, especially if some of you are working shift work. You can send it anytime you want, and it'll come to my phone. And if I'm up and around, I'll answer you as fast as possible. But I like using that system because the Outlook program is less than desirable from Microsoft as far as I see it. So communication is really important. Like I said in my announcement, I'm really thankful some of you complained about my absence, which was great, because we had some communication problems. So anyway, we're here. No one's going to get behind. We're all going to be good, and we're going to get this class hammered out. Every time I've taught this class, students do really well. And part of the reason is because you guys are all experienced adult learners, and you're in a profession that demands perfection and a lot of attention to detail. And you have to be, in order to take even classes while you're working the kinds of schedules you're working, you have to be fairly disciplined. And of course, your profession probably requires you to be fairly disciplined. So everybody seems to do well in this class, and generally we have a good time. It's usually not any problems at all. So that's what I'm anticipating. So again, my apologies for not being able to see this gruffy face on day one. Some of you already started, typical, already started working on assignments before the class even started. That's great. I'm not surprised in the least. You guys are always hardworking. So I'll figure out a schedule somehow to have a little one-on-one conversation with you, and we'll set it up at your convenience. Like I said, I'm fairly available even for those who are doing shift work. I'm certainly available. I'm on Mountain Standard Time, if that makes any difference. I know most of you, all of you, are probably on East Coast, but we'll work it out. Thanks again, and I look forward to speaking with you again and reading your assignments and making observations on it and comments. Okay? All right. Till next time, see ya.